The Christchurch mayor had to intervene because council staff decided they didn't want to celebrate Canterbury's 175th anniversary because of the colonial harm it could do. I mean, seriously, the council staff seem to get a bit precious, don't they, and think that they can impose their ideology into what Christchurch residents actually want.
Yeah, look, I think it is important that we celebrate the 175th anniversary of Christchurch, and I think the mayor did make the right call, and definitely that's been echoed by what we've been hearing through the electorate office, that people were concerned that there weren't going to be celebrations for this 175th anniversary.
Does it concern you, though, that council staff appear to be having too much power in what happens in Christchurch based on their, I would say extreme ideology, actually?
I think the mayor was right to kind of call it out, and that's really what we have an elected local body to do, is to actually voice the opinions of people. And I think this is an example of the mayor listening to the people and doing what they want. I think Phil has been very proactive. I think he's got a reputation for that, whether it be digging drains or whether it's been moving truck trailers. I think he's kind of demonstrated that he wants to get stuff done.
Duncan, what do you say?
Oh yeah, I think it'll be a nice celebration. I think probably the stance of council was informed by the fact that not everyone was excited when the kind of settlers came over the hill and looked across the Canterbury Plains and said, "All of this is mine," when it wasn't. I think the celebration will be good. The founding of the city is an entirely appropriate thing to celebrate, but I do think you need to do it against the background of knowing that the land that you're on is, part of the Ngāi Tahu Rohi, that it's, and there's tangata whenua that we need to take into account. But of course, the founding of the city and the place that it's got to, the trials and tribulations it's come through, the fantastic place it's in today, it's all worth celebrating.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Do you have any concerns at the fact that this was, essentially cancelled by council staff before it even went to elected representatives? I mean, that's a bit off, isn't it?
Well, I think Hamish makes the point, right, that this actually example of democracy working where some unelected officials took one view and some elected officials, or our elected official, the mayor, took a different view, and as it should, because he's elected and they're not, his view prevailed. So there you go. That's what democracy actually is. It works.
There we go. We're all happy. Right, let's talk about Destiny Church now. There's been a petition to get it struck off when it comes to its charity status. Hamish, cheer on this first. Is that a bridge too far, or do you think they should? I mean, they do appear to have gone a bit too far with their aggressive behaviour, haven't they?
Yeah, look, the thing is, when it comes to this, the first point I want to make is no Kiwi should feel intimidated. And so I think that just needs to be said, regardless of what group they are. When it comes to whether they should be struck off, of course, that's not really for us to decide. That's for the Department of Internal Affairs. And so that's a process they'll have to go through. I think we get onto a very slippery slope if we are going to be determining which charities can have charitable status depending on what their ideology is. But once again, it comes back to the fact that no Kiwi should feel intimidated as they go about their everyday life.
Duncan, everybody's got a right to free speech, and I understand that sentiment from some, but at the end of the day, not everybody has the right to turn up to a public environment and look aggressive and just be violent and ugly. Do that?
Bullying thugs, right? The idea that you've got a group of, thugs who wear patched jackets and intimidate kids and disrupt, perfectly legitimate activities, and then they get to do all of that tax-free is just bullshit. I call it out, right? The fact of the matter is that we do need to have better rules around charities. Gloria Vale's a charity and it basically enslaves its people. We absolutely need to look much more closely at how our charitable system works. Now, I agree in a sense with Hamish. We can't go around and just pick. We've got to have a really robust set of rules, but something's got to change. If those guys can, do their activities, get them tax-free, and then behave like that, something's badly wrong. It needs fixing.
I see on Twitter, I know I shouldn't go on Twitter, I think it was Brian Tamaki wrote, "Make New Zealand straight again." Hamish, what do you make of those kind of comments and that rhetoric?
Well, look, I think some of these things we need to be very careful. Of course, I am an advocate for free speech, but I think we need to be mindful that our society is actually made up of a whole range of different demographics, and we want to be welcoming. And it gets back to the point that no Kiwi should feel intimidated. No Kiwi should be discriminated based on a whole range of factors. So I think we need to be very careful, and I think we need to call some of this out. We have free speech, but it doesn't stop us calling out some of these things as inappropriate.
Have, though, the media kind of missed some of the details with this? Allegedly, one of the performers, also is what arguably I suppose you could claim is, and I don't know this for fact, is an adult entertainment who refers to himself or theyself or whatever as a slut. It's got quite a provocative sexual sort of background as some of these kind of adult drag queen performance do. Have we missed kind of the conversation on that, Duncan, at all?
Well, I think two entirely different things, and I don't know, I haven't heard that statement, so I'm not going to comment on it. But if you've got a person who's got one job over here and then is reading stories in the library over there, I think we don't judge, right? Reading stories in the library is not sex work. Let's not conflate the two. And if you've got Brian Tamaki saying, make New Zealand straight again, if he's talking to his own twisted rhetoric that needs straightening out, I agree. The man needs to think very carefully and reflect. And the suggestion that he's reflecting Christian values is just offensive, because Christian values are accepting and caring, and he's neither of those things.
It takes a lot to offend me, but I thought that statement was kind of off, actually. I mean, when you think about it, if there's young closeted gay men within the Destiny Church, and let's face it, there are, and they hear their so-called leaders saying that or see that, I think that's really damaging and very dangerous in my view.
Yeah,
I really do.
Can I just follow up on that, Chris? I think as a country, we are proud of our diversity, and I think it's something that we should cherish. It's something that we should do.
Yep, I agree. Just quickly, I want to just very briefly touch on this, but should New Zealand pull out of this Paris Agreement? It's getting a lot of hate, excuse the pun, because it does seem like a bit of a waste of time, Duncan, doesn't it? Why are we giving millions and millions of dollars away as a small country that pays hardly anything in terms of our heat emissions?
Two things there. I mean, every individual person can make the argument that my own impact is so tiny, and what you end up with is an absolute disaster. Imagine if we did that with waste or pollution. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it doesn't have to cost. Yes, we need to adapt, but a green economy, a modern and electrified economy, is actually the better and more productive economy. And the third thing is this: tell that to Tokelau, whose island is sinking beneath the waves because of the inaction. And tell that to Bangladesh, whose floods are getting worse and worse year on year because of the inaction of developed nations like our own. So absolutely no, don't get out of the Paris Agreement. We need to comply with it, and we need to be a leader here because we can and we can afford to.
Now, that's interesting you say that, because a lot of the times, a lot of politicians say we need to be leaders in this. Why does New Zealand need to be a leader when you've got the likes of China and also India, huge polluters? Why should New Zealand be a leader at the expense of our economy?
Well, there's two reasons for that, right? First of all, despite, what we hear, we're relatively wealthy. We're a developed economy. We've got the technological backing to make that leap. And the second thing is this: we are an industrialized economy. We have had the benefit of generations of carbon emissions, whereas someone like China, their carbon emissions per capita are less than ours already, and their generational carbon emissions are tiny. So the countries of the developed West, of which I include us, have benefited on the back of all of the carbon emissions which countries like Bangladesh, Tokelau, and many other developing nations are paying for.
Hamish, what do you say?
Look, I don't think we should pull out. I think it would affect a lot of our trade if we pulled out of the Paris Agreement. Of course, we want to actually grow our trade, and I think the last thing we want to do is ship our agriculture offshore. So I think it's very important that we stay in. I think we actually have a very unique advantage here in New Zealand. I think we have the ability to generate a lot of renewable energy, and we see Ko-Fi Park by the Christchurch International Airport being built. I was just out at the airport during last week when they launched their electric fire truck. I think we can actually have these technological advances advance our economy. I think there's going to be room in New Zealand for things like data centres that we can power by renewables. And I think that is going to become more and more valuable as we go forward and as the world looks to reduce its emissions.
I do like the look of that electric fire truck, but gee, the audience is hard to please with that one there. They thought it was a bit of a joke, really. I mean, it was so expensive, and they thought, well, really, we've got an electric fire truck? I mean, and also, there are great people at the airport. There are lovely people at the airport, and I really like the team there. But, this whole sustainability thing from an airport when they've got planes taking off, it seems like a little bit of a, I don't know, public relations thing, electric fire trucks, and we're the clean, green airport. And meanwhile, there's that, that plane that's carbon emitting.
But the thing is, I think there was a lot of, talking about the fire truck, I think there's a lot of technology on there that will help in emergency situations. But also they're teaming up with Fabrum, a local hydrogen generation company, to kind of start generating hydrogen. I think it's really about kind of exploring some of these technologies as we move forward.
When I think of hydrogen, just out of it, I always think of the Hindenburg. But anyway, I digress. Finally, the Christchurch mayoralty contest still appears to be between, I think the last time we've spoken, I think Phil Major announced he was running again between Sarah Templeton and basically him at the moment. I suspect the usual suspects will come out of the woodworks. To you, Duncan, any thoughts on that? I mean, is Labor going to put somebody up? I mean, there was a big rumour at one stage that Jason Gunn was going to be the mayoral candidate.
That was started by an off-the-cuff joke by himself, and I think that truly was ridiculous. Although I'm not saying he wouldn't make a good mayor, but no, he's not running. I think that two front runners, right? Sarah Templeton and Phil Major. I think it's going to be a good contest. I think there's going to be a choice there. I think we're going to have really distinct policies. And I think one of the questions that I'll ask, I'd be putting to people is, who's going to bring the councillors around the table together to get shit done best? Because that's the real question for council. The mayor is not the prime minister; they're just the chairman of the board, and so they're going to have to get people together and agreeing. And so I think it's going to be a good contest.
And that's a very good point you make. So, in your view, who do you think's best placed to bring people around the table together? Would it be Sarah Templeton at this rate, or would it be Phil Major?
Well, I think that's the question, and at the moment,
what do you reckon? Oh, well, I think you do.
I think it's really important because I'll be watching them both and seeing how they campaign, and see whether they, because I don't want to see them going out and polarising people. I want to see them going out and bringing people together, and the one that does that better, I hope, wins.
What a lovely answer, Hamish. To you, what do you think?
Look, I think it's very healthy to have a competition for the mayoralty. Look, I've worked well with Phil. I appreciate he's independent and doesn't belong to a party, have that ideology, but worked really well in the Island electorate around the Harewood Cycleway to try and get the common sense location of that with some traffic lights and kind of scrap some of the over-engineered cycleways. But I think what we've seen in Christchurch, we have in the latest quality of life survey, I see that it's up to we are the leading city in New Zealand, and I think we have a really bright future. And so it's really good to have a healthy competition.
Yeah, and I think this will be an interesting period in Christchurch's political history, because it feels like there is a real contest now between essentially. I know it's early days, but it's probably still going to be Sarah and Phil, and I do think they bring individual.
You appreciate, Chris. I have to be careful because when we're in government, we'll have to work with the next mayor of Christchurch.
Oh, when you're in government.
We might have gone through a few more local body elections before that, Duncan.
Well, I'll put $1 down on that.
Yeah. Look, nice to speak with you, gentlemen. Have a great weekend.
Excellent.